Welcome back. Vaccine passports have become a polarising topic since the President mentioned it in his address to the nation on Sunday night. While we await clarity from government as to whether it will implement vaccine passports, expert opinions have varied. Let's unpack this further with Professor Keymanthri Moodley from Stellenbosch University Centre for Medical Ethics and Law. Keymanthri, thanks for your time. Appreciate it. So many experts say it would be against the Constitution to expect people to have vaccine passports to enter places. You reckon that's not really the case?
Good evening, Shahan. Yes, so in the first place, I think we should be calling them vaccine certificates or vaccine cards, because they're not necessarily only for travel purposes. In South Africa, I think the intention is to use them as, proof of entry into various venues, especially indoor venues where there will be many other people present. So although there is a strong call for, individual rights, it's completely out of place in a pandemic where we need to look at a public health ethics approach. And our rights have been limited throughout the pandemic in various different ways, including lockdowns, isolation, quarantine, mandatory masking. And so having to show proof of a vaccine using a card, a passport, a digital form of a certificate is really only intended to protect health, protect lives of people and of other people in communities. And so in that respect, I think it's a completely justifiable and reasonable measure to implement in the context of a pandemic.
The National Disaster Act, of course, is one of the reasons or things that government could use, I'm reading. But obviously, the right to choice when it comes to be vaccinated or not is what many people are concerned about, because ultimately, if you're asking people to have vaccine certificates or passports, whatever you want to call it, to enter a place, you're putting them in a corner and ultimately forcing them to get vaccinated, even if they don't want to. So the right to choice there is being infringed on.
Absolutely. And rights may be limited legally, ethically, in various different frameworks. One could very easily argue for limitation of rights in the public interest. So if you're sitting alone in your own home and you're not a risk to anybody else, that's fine. But as soon as you venture out and you enter into public spaces, especially communal indoor spaces, you are placing others at risk. And you cannot then claim, individual rights under those circumstances in the context of a pandemic.
Yeah, and you also argue that the rights were overpowered by the need to contain the public health crisis in South Africa. But, there are many anti-vaxxers, there are many experts who even say things about whether or not the vaccines are effective, etc., despite the majority of people saying it is. So there are arguments that people could make around this overall. Is that something that could see us move away from a vaccine passport? And let's be honest, there are other countries like the UK that have implemented vaccine passports and then very quickly realized that they shouldn't have it.
Well, they've put a temporary hold on it, but it is in Plan B for their winter plan coming up. Other environments that, paused vaccine passes or certificates for a short period of time, like Israel, have re-implemented them. So it's a matter of, governments deciding on what is required at a specific point in time, depending on the infection rate in the country. Now, as things stand in South Africa, we are, we're doing very well, but we're still far away from our vaccine targets. We risk having supplies of vaccines wasted due to expiry, and the uptake of vaccines is variable. And under these circumstances, it becomes absolutely important to institute measures that will increase the uptake of vaccines. We've already seen in France, despite the pushback from anti-vaxxers, that instituting vaccine certificate requirements in indoor venues resulted in vaccine uptake increasing to 20% more than what it was prior to having the vaccine certificates in place. So in many parts of the world, there are protests and there is pushback. And that's what happens in a democracy. And as long as they are not violent, they're acceptable. But governments are continuing to impose these mandates because they are required on the basis of public health.
Yeah, all right. Thank you so much for your time. We do appreciate it. That was Professor Keymanthri Moodley from Stellenbosch University's Center for Medical Ethics and Law.